You were not meant to be a slave to the grind. You were not meant to trade your life force for money. You can escape gravity. You can unlock your life. You got this. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to Unlock Your Life. It's your host, Jennings Smith. Guys, about a year ago, I was going through an extremely stressful time. It was actually in October, about 12 months ago. We were closing on a deal, and this deal was pretty much falling apart, and we really needed it to close. This was something that we'd gotten behind on the renovations. We were in a bad loan. The loan was going to be maturing, and the rate was floating. The rate was moving up. And this was coming on the heels of just selling another property that was in the same situation. And we've been working on these two projects for about a year and just constantly, being on site, checking the numbers. We'd had to fire a property manager. We'd had to fire a contractor. We'd had to replace property managers, replace contractors, take over the project ourselves as the GPs. It was a very, very intense time. And I remember my wife coming to me one night after I'd been burning the midnight oil, staying up late, making calls, trying to turn this project around. And, she's very, very great and very, very supportive, but I got into a fight with her. And she kind of went along the lines of, you're not here, you're crabby with the kids, you're short, your patience is thin, I feel like you're a million miles away, and you're doing all this stuff, and we're left at home, and we don't have the best of you, you're not engaging with us. And of course, I'll ask you, have you ever had a fight like that with your spouse, with your wife, your husband, where they felt like you've been working too much or disengaged or just aren't present with them and with the kids? And you probably, maybe you're better than me, but the response that I had, instead of saying, oh, I didn't know you felt that way, this is what I'm going through, let's work on it, I got really defensive and I got really, really upset. And it turned into kind of a drawn out argument. And my basic tenet of my argument was, I'm doing all this for you. I'm doing all this stuff for you and the kids and our financial future and our freedom. And I'm building passive income and I'm building net worth. And how could you attack me like this? Because I'm doing all this for you. So I was at a conference last week in St. Louis, and it's called The Dad Edge. There's a guy named Larry Hagner, and if you haven't heard of him, he has a podcast called The Dad Edge. I would highly recommend that you Google it and listen to a couple episodes, because this guy's phenomenal. And he has a mentoring program, a coaching program to help business guys stay in relationship with their kids, stay in relationship with their wives, and repair those relationships if they're damaged, and be intentional about moving those relationships forward. Because we always just focus on business. And the first episode I ever recorded was our bank account full of money and a house full of strangers, where you can focus so hard on that for so many years. And yes, maybe you achieve what you wanted to achieve, but you alienate every relationship that you have. And so they brought up that specific quote at this conference. We're doing it for them. And the pushback was, no, you're not. You're not doing it for them. Okay, well, if I'm not doing it for them, then who are you doing it for? Well, if you're honest with yourself, if I was honest with myself, which I wasn't at that point, but I was a week and a half ago, if I'm honest with myself, I can look back to these times where I was redlining my life, pushing way too hard, and recognize that I wasn't really doing it for them. I was doing it for me. I was doing it for my ego. I was doing it for my goals, my achievement, the lifestyle that I wanted, to be in control of everything, in control of my finances and my future. And I wanted, the notoriety. I wanted the pat on the back. Oh man, you're crushing it. You're doing so great. On and on and on. And I wasn't doing it for them. Now, in a macro sense, yes, of course. And I'm not talking about people that are not providing for their families, deadbeat dads or whatever. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming that hard work is not your problem. But what I'm talking about is when we're always reaching for more and we're always stretching and grasping and we're getting out of balance, and we justify it by saying, well, I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my wife. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this so that I can give them the life that they never had. The question that was posed after that was, well, have you ever really asked them what they want? If you're doing it for them, is that what they even want? Because they probably don't want that. That probably is not the top desire in the hierarchy of your kids. Oh, I really, really want my dad to be a multi-millionaire. I really, really want my dad to make $50,000 a month in passive income. I really want my dad to own $50 million worth of real estate. That's my top goal for my dad. If you ask your kid that, probably not going to be their answer. So what do they want? Well, looking through my relationships, I know that my kids want connection. My wife wants connection. They want to have conversations. And when you're too wrapped up and you're too stressed out and you're too redlining, I call it that, when you hit the gas on the car and your tachometer goes all the way into the red, like your car can run that way for a little while. But if you're constantly and continuously running that car on the red line, something's going to break. It may be you, it may be your health, it may be your relationship with your wife, maybe your relationship with your kids. One of the purposes and the focus of the dad age is because he gets calls every week. Larry gets calls every week from guys that say, my wife just sat me down and she's leaving me. My wife sat me down and she says I'm a completely different person than the one she was married to. She doesn't want to be with me anymore. She wants to take the kids and pack up and move to California. Right? And I had no idea. He says he hears that over and over, that the man has no idea. And we are kind of thick-headed in that regard because we think we're doing all this for them. We think that we're giving them everything that they want. How could they be unhappy when we're really trying to give them something that we want? We're giving them something that maybe they didn't even ask for. So when you are way out of balance, how can you connect? I know at that point in time, I could not connect. I was stressed out. I was worried. I didn't have any peace. And it was really hard to be patient with my kids. It was really hard not to snap at the dinner table when they knock over their drink. It was really hard to be patient and listen to my son tell me about the Legos that he built when I'm thinking about a $5 million loan looming over my head. It's just, if you're logical and you're honest with yourself, it's really hard to be in those connection moments when you have these things weighing on you like that. I think they want kindness out of you. I think they want patience. I think they want your presence when you're with them, that you're actually engaging with them, that you're actually talking to them, that you're actually focusing with them. So let's bring it back into reality. Because you can say, well, Jennings, sometimes you got to do that stuff. Sometimes you got to redline it. Sometimes you got to push. Sometimes you got to focus. Sometimes you have to do hard things. Sometimes you have to grow outside your comfort zone. And that's what this podcast is all about. And I'm not saying there's not a balance, and I'm not saying there's times. And my wife was very gracious to me in that period of time. She let me get through it. We got the deals sold. We got them off our back, and we moved into the next cycle. But I lived in that zone for quite a long time. And I liken it to a balance. We've talked about this, where in your work balance, it's like there's the things that don't really matter, and then there's the things that really, really matter. The things that really, really matter are they're driving revenue, they're driving sales, they're growing your business, they're acquiring new apartment building, whatever, running your operations smoothly. Those things you can get out of balance, right? And sometimes the little details get caught in the weeds, or you can sub those out, assign them to your assistant, assign them to your team, whatever. And every once in a while, you got to get in there and clean that up. But you can live out of balance with the business for a while when you're really pushing aggressive growth. In the family, though, it doesn't work that way. Because if you live on the red line, if you live out of balance for too long and you're not rebalancing that quickly, it can break and it can't be repaired. This is where you're pushing so hard and you're doing it for an extended period of time. So for example, let's say you got to go to a conference, right? I just went out to Houston, and then on the back of that, I went to California. So I was gone for 5-6 days straight. My wife's at home with the 4 kids, and that's hard on her. But I needed to do it. I needed to go to the conference. I needed to do the thing in California. It was a deal room meetup. A bunch of people showed up. It was awesome. It was a great time. However, when I come back, am I the next week going on another conference? Am I going to be so behind in work that I'm just going to bury myself in work for the next 10, 12, 14 days and not even talk to my family because I've been traveling and I got behind? This is where I'm talking about you've got to rebalance it quickly, where if you know you're out of balance and it can't be helped, there's just an urgent thing right now that we got to get through, think about, how can I rebalance that this weekend? How can I rebalance that next week? And how can I build a life that is more in balance? A lot of people come to me that are in real estate, they're flipping houses, they're wholesaling, and they want to get into multifamily and commercial real estate because it is not so intense all the time, right? The tenants are paying their rent, they've got their property manager managing it, they're managing the asset, and eventually it's going to be worth more and they're going to sell it, get the payday, and they're getting a little bit of cash flow along the way. And it's attractive because they can build a balanced life. Begin as you mean to go. Whereas if you're working as a flipper, it's like the only way to flip more houses is to flip more houses and to take on more renovations and get more contractors and get more employees and do more deals. And it's really difficult to scale that chaos without burning out. And so I want to say not all businesses are created equal. There's definitely a way to build a business that can stay in balance most of the time. I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes things go off the rails. Sometimes there's situations and times in life that you really have to focus and push. But that shouldn't be the norm. That shouldn't be the life that you're building. So it is okay to do it for them. And I think it's great that you're planning for your kids' college and you want to throw your daughter a nice wedding and you want to take your wife on a vacation and you got to be able to afford that stuff. And you got to have the financial wherewithal to pay the mortgage and put food on the table. We get that. But don't get so lost in pursuing more and getting out of balance and working 40, 50, 60 hours a week consistently and constantly at the cost of these relationships. Because these relationships are irreplaceable. And at the end of the day, what good is the whole world when you don't have those trusted, loving relationships, people that care about you, that trust you, that know you, that you can share those things with? And so I want to leave you with this story, and then I'm going to recap with my final thought. This week, my son, he's 11 years old, and he really, really, really wants to go deer hunting. And we've been deer hunting before, but we don't go that often. And there's a neighbor, and his son is a year older than Jennings, and he's killed a couple of deer, and Jennings is best friends with this kid, great kid. And Jennings really, really wants to go deer hunting. And so he's asking me, and I say, Monday, I'm like way too busy. I can't do it. He said, can we go Tuesday afternoon? I say, yeah, we can, but I didn't realize I had a prior commitment. I had a meeting at 6:30 at church, and I couldn't break it because I'd already made that promise. And so I talked to him, and my wife was like, hey, when are you going to take him hunting? You got to take him hunting. And at that point, I really wanted to just be like, look, I'm just slammed right now. I can't do it. I can't make time for it, which really wasn't true. I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to wake up early in the morning. I didn't want to go out there, blow 2-3 hours and get behind my whole day. I knew we probably weren't going to see anything anyways because, he's probably going to be moving around and there's not that many deer out there anyhow. I had a million reasons why I didn't want to do this. But I told my wife, okay, I can do it. I can make it happen Wednesday morning. I can do it Tuesday, but do it Wednesday. So she tells little Jennings the third, and he's over the moon. Oh, Dad, I can't wait to go hunting. I'm ready, and he's gathering together his sweatshirt and he's putting on his boots and he's got his scent away spray ready to go. And so he's super excited. And we wake up this morning, 5 a.m., get our stuff on. He immediately wakes up. Like for some reason, it's super hard to wake him up when it's time for school. But this morning this happened. This morning, I just tapped him on the head and boom, he's out of bed. He's getting ready. He's ready to go. So we load up the rifle, we get our stuff on, we drive out to the place where we're going to go hunting, and we sit in the blind, and the hours drag on, and sure enough, no deer comes. I'm sorry, I wish it was a better podcast story that big buck came out and we killed an 8-point buck. That didn't happen. But we still had a great time. We talked on the way in. We talked a little bit in the stand, not too much because I don't want to scare the deer away. We had a father and son moment on the way back, and I just thought about what I liked about him. And I said, Jennings, what I really, really like about you and what means a lot to me is that you wanted to spend time with me. You wanted to be my friend. You wanted to go hunting with me. And I know that, as he gets older, that there's probably going to be a period of time where he doesn't really necessarily want to do that as much when he's 15, 16, whatever. But for now, for today, he wanted to go hunting with me, and I made it a priority. Like I pushed, sure, dude, I had a million things I could have done this morning. I'm trying to close a deal in Colombia. We're trying to raise some capital, get that in for the deal. There's a lot of paperwork. I mean, there's a million things that I could have done. Urgent things, important things, right? But I carved out, 2-3 hours to make this happen, and he's going to remember that. And we deepen that relationship a little bit. And so the closing thought I want to leave you with is, instead of I'm doing this all for you, in that someday, 10 years, 20 years down the road, we're going to have this golden retirement on our yacht, and we're going to have this beach house, and we're going to be able to take all the vacations and do all the stuff. What are you doing for them today? Today is all we have, right? And if we're not doing anything for them today, then we're missing the whole point. We're missing the whole boat. And so, yes, you may not be able to do that grand gesture and take your kids on the $20,000 trip to Europe, but you can take your kid camping. You can take your kid hunting. You can go out on a date, take your daughter to ice cream and take her on a golf cart ride. Those things are really what build the lifetime memories. That's what builds the relationship. So that when you do get there, and you will get there, they still want to do those things with you. They still want to hang out with you. You still have your marriage intact. You still have your family and kids intact. And they're not, oh, dad was always too busy for me. Well, now I'm too busy for him, right? So not, I'm doing this all for someday, but what are we doing for them today? So guys, have a great Wednesday. I appreciate you. If you enjoy the podcast, if you're listening out there, shoot me a DM. Say, hey man, I'm listening. Thank you. It means a lot to me, and I love to communicate. I answer every message I get. So hit me up on socials, wherever you want, and we'll connect and take some time this week to do something for them today and make sure you unlock your life. All right, guys, peace.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.